Howdy, y'all, and welcome to this new series where I'm planning my next venture. Otis Park is gone, obviously, so we're back to the basics. Just rolling stock, locomotives, and track. Trying to find my way back to my next project, next venture. So, Otis Park, lessons learned. That was my first layout that I built by myself. That's really where I had to test the skills, see if I could do it, see if I like doing it, and I did like doing it, and I want to continue to do it. So, I really had never done any kind of bench work or wiring, so both of those things were minimal. My next venture will probably be a little bit more. I had never really done a lot with scenery. I had just helped my grandfather work on his layout as a kid, and just had trains and random stuff over my life where I had just kind of run stuff. So Otis Park was a really good learning experience for me. And I'm going to take those lessons and share what I learned with you, and things that I'll do again and things that I won't do again. And this video will be more of a different way of thinking about compression than what and how to compress things. So let's get right into it, because there are really two things that you can't compress. Well, three really in this shot. Turnouts and your locomotives and rolling stock. They're going to be that size. The only way you can compress them is go down a scale, and then you're just back to square one in a different scale. So if you're going to operate with turnouts, then you need space. So you're going to need, 2 car lengths to get out of siding or a spur or an industry or whatever it is. So you have to consider that right off the bat, and that's going to be a big space eliminator. So for me, working on a shelf layout that was 8 feet, I think 8 feet was pretty much the minimum to really be effective, but you lose the ability to have the train go anywhere. So at 8 feet or under, you're basically just switching out the industry. You can't really leave the scene. And that was one of the challenges for me, was I wanted to be able to leave the scene, figure out a way to leave the scene. Because if you're rail fanning and you're standing at the industry, that's kind of what a shelf layout becomes. You're just at the industry and that's all that's happening, which is fine. I mean, that does work, but it leaves a little bit something to be desired. So I think 12, 16 foot plus is where you can start to gather some of that space you need to make it feel like the train is actually arriving from somewhere and can leave after it finishes the job, which adds a little bit to the realism and operational feel. So that being said, that kind of already predicates what you're doing with how many turnouts, how many cars you can park at that industry. Those are going to be a big factor in whatever I do moving forward. And that kind of, I've done a lot of rail fanning in the past 2 years since I started Otis Park. I've watched a lot of rail fanning videos. I've read a lot. I've looked at a lot of books and magazines. And one thing that really became apparent to me is how big some of these industries really are. You look at some of these steel mills in Pennsylvania and Ohio, and they're a couple miles long, and they have a yard right next to them that supports them that are a couple miles long. And that really started to have an effect on me of how I was looking at a model railroad. And I guess this is probably a good time to go back to what I was saying about Otis when I started and while I was building that. I never planned on, I don't look at it as a model railroader, as somebody that's like artistic minded. It was more of an artistic interpretation or an artistic rendering of trains passing through a modern industrial setting, more than me trying to build a model railroad. And yes, in the end, it's the same. You're still building a layout, but how you interpret that and how you look at what you're modeling changes a little bit. And what I mean by that is I started to focus on the industry itself rather than trying to run an operational railroad. Because if you say model railroad, you instantly think, well, you have to build the whole thing, right? Why not just focus in on an industry? And the one analogy that I can use that may make sense is from me having a background as a chef. My by design, I would make a plate, and if you go to any restaurant, you sit down, let's say you order a fish or a steak or chicken, when your plate comes, it's divided into three, and you have protein, vegetable, and starch, and that's it. That's what you have, those three things. And if you look at your layout the same way, you should have a place of origin where your train starts, a destination where it goes to and fulfills its job, an industry, a yard, or whatever, and then a back to the place of origin, because that's what they do. They return back to what it is. So it's that's the three pieces of that pie, where I think, where we get caught up as modelers in the world that we live in is, there's so much good stuff out there, and you want to model everything, and the companies don't help. They advertise, they build new stuff all the time. There's always something new. There's always something great. And, we all fall in that trap, but I'm the same way. I want as much as I can. And it, going back to the analogy of the three pieces of the pie, the plate divided into three with the protein and starch and vegetable. If you go to a buffet, you come back, you go up to the buffet, and it's just loaded with stuff. And you come back and you've got 3 or 4 proteins, 6 or 7 starches, 6 or 7 vegetables, and your plate's really just overflowing. And you lose that simplicity. You lose the essence of what you really need versus what you really want. And to find that balance when doing a layout, I think is key, because I know for me, I think you lose. I look at it as I lose that vision of the rendering of the trains passing through that industrial setting, of just that simplicity. Usually, if I go rail fan somewhere where, most of the time it's either I see the train going by at a crossing, or I'm standing at a business and they're dropping off trains. That's pretty much all I see. I don't see the entire railroad. And so this is where my mind started to change from compression to expansion. And by expansion, I mean focusing in on an industry and blowing that up and making, whether you've got 4 feet, 6 feet, 20 feet, 50 feet to do a layout. If you had 60 feet, you still probably wouldn't be able to get some of those larger steel mills in that space, just the steel mill itself, let alone the adjacent yard. And that's how I want to view my next project, is through expansion. And, it'll probably just be one industry on one side and the yard that supports it on the next. And I think I'll be able to get a lot more enjoyment out of that than if I try to fit too many things. Like I love tank cars, I love hoppers, I love, I would love to have an intermodal yard. I would have, but I think at some point you just jam too much stuff into a small space, and then you kind of lose grip. I know I would, and I know that even in Otis Park, just trying to make 3 businesses was too much. I wish when I had originally designed it with 8 feet, it would have just been a siding with 1 business. And I think that would have made a lot more sense. So I want to view everything through expansion rather than compression, rather than taking the real world and trying to fit everything I can think of into a small space. I want to take one industry and blow it up and fit that into the space that I have. And I think that that's, for me, going to be a more realistic goal. I think I'll have a lot more operational realism. I think I'll have more visual realism, and that's my plan. So thank you for joining me on this new journey, and we'll see what happens. We'll see how I won't be able to start building for a while. I'm still living in the same place. I don't know how long I'll actually live here. So I don't want to start building bench work and then have to take it down and move it. But I will start building the things that I need to go into place for that. So once I figure out what I'll do, I'll start building stuff for the industries. It'll probably be something that involves tank cars and covered hoppers and cement, grain, something like that. So thank you for joining me, and keep following, and we'll get through this together. If you have any questions, any comments, feel free to leave them. I always appreciate getting feedback. Have a great day.